and then we can restart it again too. And I think with this Zoom, oh, I'm recording right now. Hold on, I better stop.
Alrighty, hi boys and girls. It's nice to see you guys again. So today we are going to, oh, we also have Mr. Yates here. You just can't see him, but I promise he's there. You want to say hi, Mr. Yates?
Hi, boys and girls. I'll be your scribe today.
Yes, he will be. His best. All right, so today we are going to be doing lesson 5, classifying quadrilaterals. And so today you're going to learn how to classify quadrilaterals by using one or more attributes to classify them. So those attributes can be congruent sides, which congruent means same size and same shape. Parallel sides, which means that the two opposite sides are never going to intersect or cross each other. And right angles. You guys are quite familiar with these when you guys are identifying your guys' right triangles. A right angle means it's an angle that is 90 degrees. So let's go ahead and get started. So example number 1, it says Trina cut out polygon mats to use for her travel photos. Use the figures below to determine missing attributes of each type of quadrilateral. So Mr. Yates, do you mind just moving the paper up just a little bit there? Yep.
There you go.
Just like so. Thank you, kind sir. All right, so boys and girls, each one of these is going to be a quadrilateral. So we're going to go ahead and go in a circle. So we're going to start with the trapezoid. So Mr. Yates, do you mind pointing to the trapezoid just so all of them can see? Yep, that one right there, boys and girls. So let's go ahead and take a look. So it says trapezoid is a quadrilateral with exactly blank pair of opposite sides parallel. So boys and girls, we want to look at our opposite sides. We have 2 pairs of opposite sides. Now, Mr. Yates, do you mind highlighting one pair of opposite sides in one color and then another pair of opposite sides in a different color?
Sure.
Just so they can see the 2.
All right. I did a lot of great job on a straight line on this one, Miss Garcia, so I'm going to try again.
Okay.
And then I'll match up another set of lines with another color.
Yep. Perfect. Yep. All right. So boys and girls, we want to take a look at the 2 opposite sides that Mr. Yates highlighted for us. So looking at this one, it says, but we want to look for the pair of opposite sides. How many pairs of opposite sides parallel? Now, if you remember and think back to yesterday's lesson, parallel means that this pair of opposite sides will not intersect with each other. And what intersect means is that they will never cross or touch each other. So I want you guys to take a look at the trapezoid and think to yourself, which color is going to be the pair of opposite sides that are parallel? And think to yourself. And if you thought to yourself the red, then that would be correct. So it is going to, but let's take a look at the blue. So the blue lines are the ones that are kind of like this. So if Mr. Yates kept drawing those lines and made them longer, then those lines would eventually intersect with each other, or they would cross one another, just like he's showing you guys right here. So that pair is not a pair of parallel lines. So a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with exactly 1 pair of opposite sides. So let's go ahead and write our 1, or you can write the number 1, whichever one your heart desires to do. Yep, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and move to the right. We're gonna go ahead and look at the parallelogram now. So, Mr. Yates, do you mind? Oh, yep, he's already hovering over it. So, a parallelogram is defined as a quadrilateral with opposite sides congruent and blank. So, let's go ahead and look at our 2 pairs of opposite sides. Mr. Yates, do you mind going in and highlighting both pairs of opposite sides for me? Perfect. These lines are a lot straighter than I could do any day, so. Alrighty, so we have 2 pairs. We have a the blue ones, the blue pairs of opposite sides, as well as the red ones. And so it's saying that the opposite sides are congruent, which means that they are the same size as well as the same shape. And what's another way that we could describe these pairs of opposite sides? Think to yourself as to how we could describe these. And if you thought that they are parallel, then that would be correct, because if you look at each pair of opposite sides, neither one would intersect with each other. They would just keep on going without touching one another. So let's go ahead and fill in our blank with the word parallel. And I want you guys to be mindful of your spelling. So how you spell parallel is P-A-R-A-L-L-E-L.
You know, one thing I noticed about parallel, Ms. Garcia, it has a set of parallel lines in it.
Oh yeah, I always see it like double hockey sticks. Like when I see like the two hockey sticks. I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, you're right. Parallel that's a good way to remember it. So if you need a way to help remember the definition of parallel, just think of that, boys and girls. All right, so we are going to now move on to our rhombus. Our rhombus is going to be the one that's directly underneath our parallelogram. It's the one that kind of looks like a sideways diamond kind of thing. Yep, just like so. So a rhombus is defined as a parallelogram with blank sides congruent. So we want to look at each side of our rhombus. So we have 4 sides. Mr. Yates, do you want to go ahead and show them the 4 sides? So there's side 1. There's side 2.
And they're all the same size, aren't they?
Yeah, they definitely are.
So I'll use the same color.
Yeah. So boys and girls, when it says congruent, congruent means same size as well as the same shape. So a rhombus has a parallelogram with, as which Mr. Yates pointed out, they each are the same size as well as the same shape. So boys and girls, this rhombus has 4 sides that are congruent. So let's go ahead and fill in our space or our blank with either the number 4 or the word 4. And do you guys remember the little dash sign that we taught? It's kind of a while back, but I think it was like the last lesson before spring break, we used the little dash marks to show that they were congruent, just like Mr. Yates did. So he did 1 dash on each one to show that all 4 sides are congruent. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our square next. All right, so our square is defined as a parallelogram with blank sides, congruent, and blank right angles. So let's go ahead and take a look at our 4 sides. Mr. Yates, do you mind highlighting all 4 sides for me?
Sure.
Thank you. Alrighty. And he's doing all of them in red because all 4 sides are congruent. And remember, boys and girls, congruent means same size as well as the same shape. And he's putting like a little dash or tick mark on each one of those to show that they are all congruent. So let's go ahead and fill in our first blank of our square with either the word 4 or the number 4. So a square is a parallelogram with 4 sides congruent. But we're not done yet. Okay, so it says, and blank right angles. So Mr. Yates, do you mind counting each one of our right angles that are shown on that square?
No, I can tell because it got this little right angle mark right here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 right angles.
Exactly. So we are going to fill in that second blank with either the word 4 or the number 4, whichever one you guys prefer. So a square is a parallelogram with 4 sides congruent and 4 right angles. And then we have a little bonus sentence at the bottom there. It says a square has all the attributes of a rectangle and a blank. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I want to kind of look at the rhombus first. So a rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 sides congruent. Now, Mr. Yates showed that with each one of those tick marks on each side, but we also did that on our square. That's interesting. So the correct answer for this, boys and girls, is going to be a square has all the attributes of a rectangle and a rhombus. And make sure you guys are paying attention to your spelling right here. It's going to be R-H-O-M-B-U-S, rhombus. Perfect. All right. So now that we finished up our square, we are going to go ahead and fill in our rectangle. It says a rectangle is defined as a parallelogram with blank right angles. Now, Mr. Yates, do you mind counting the right angles in our rectangle?
Not at all. I can tell they're rectangles or right angles because they have the little right angle sign. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Exactly. So, boys and girls, a rectangle is defined as a parallelogram with 4 right angles. Awesome. So, boys and girls, this is an excellent thing that you guys can pause the video on and write down and draw, or, you know, since it is a video, you guys can always just come back to this part and just pause it on this screen to help you guys when you guys are doing your homework. It's a great and awesome resource for you guys to use as you guys are doing that. All right, let's go ahead and turn the page on over, Mr. Yates, to our guided practice.
Which one do we want to start with, Miss Garcia?
Let's go ahead and we can start with the number 1 of the guided practice. Yep, perfect. So we're going to take a look at our number 1. It says, describe the attributes of the quadrilateral below, then classify the quadrilateral based on its attributes. So it kind of gave you guys some blanks to fill in here, but make sure that you guys are writing down all the words on your guys' notes if you guys are taking notes. So it says the opposite sides of the quadrilateral are, and I want you guys to think to yourself as to what attributes we wrote down. Are they parallel? Are they congruent? All that fun stuff. So let's go ahead and think to ourselves as to what we could put there. And oh my gosh, if you guys thought that they are congruent, you would be correct. So the opposite sides of the quadrilateral are congruent. And a way that you guys can show that is with those tick marks that Mr. Yates is drawing right now. And he put 2 tick marks on the left and the right ones because those 2 are the same, are congruent. And then he also put 1 tick mark on the top and the bottom one because those 2 are congruent. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next blank. And if you guys are needing help with this, rewind the video a bit to that chart that was like your guys' notes right there that had all the different, the rectangle, the rhombus, the square, all that stuff. That will really help you guys with this. All right, so it says the opposite sides of the quadrilateral are congruent, and go ahead and think to yourself as to what you guys could put in that blank. And oh my goodness, if you guys thought of the word parallel, I am so proud because that would be correct. So parallel means, boys and girls, that those lines are never going to intersect. Just like Mr. Yates showed on the blue and on the red, those 2 red lines will never touch each other, and those blue ones will never touch each other either. So that means that they are going to be parallel. And make sure you guys are paying attention to your spelling. All right, and then it says there are blank right angles. Mr. Yates, do you mind counting the number of right angles we have?
I'm getting good at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 right angles.
Yep, 4 right angles, boys and girls. Now you can either write the number or you can write the word. Either one works. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 2.
Oh, Miss Garcia, before we go, don't forget we have to tell what this quadrilateral is. Since it's
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I skipped over that. Make sure you guys are paying attention because I am blind. Okay, it says, so the quadrilateral is a blank. So right here, you're going to be identifying what the shape is. And if you need to, don't feel free to look at that chart that was at the beginning of the video. This quadrilateral is, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, it is a rectangle. So let's go ahead and fill in our space with the word rectangle. Just like Mr. Yates is doing. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and move the paper on up if you could, Mr. Yates. Awesome. So it says, the design below is made up of a repeating quadrilateral. So that means that it's made up of the same quadrilateral, just a bunch of different times. It says, describe the attributes of the quadrilateral. Then classify the quadrilateral based on its attributes. So we're going to be doing the same thing here that we did in number 1. So it says the quadrilateral has blank congruent sides. So let's take a look at the the ones that are highlighted in blue, because that's going to be the same shape repeated over and over again. So let's go ahead and see how many congruent sides it has. So Mr. Yates highlighted 1, 2. And does it have any more congruent sides, Mr. Yates?
Well, I'm looking at it and it looks like all 4 sides are the same, don't you?
Yep. That I am shook. Wow, that's amazing. So this quadrilateral, boys and girls, let's go ahead and count the number of sides. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you guys can mark it with those tick marks as well, just like Mr. Yates is doing right now. So this one's going to have 4 congruent sides, boys and girls. Now, congruent means the same size and the same shape. So we're going to go ahead and fill in our blank with either the word or the number 4. Awesome. So then our next line reads, opposite sides are blank. So Mr. Yates, can you go ahead and highlight the 2 pairs of opposite sides in that one for me?
Yeah, and since they're all the same, I'll just do another one.
Perfect.
Here, and I'll get the other side.
Ooh, he ventured out. He did green. All right, so this one is going to say the opposite sides are, and think to yourself what you guys could put right there. If you guys are thinking the word parallel, you guys would be correct, because each pair of those opposite sides, both the pair of red and the pair of green, will never intersect or cross one another. So we're going to go ahead and write parallel right there. Perfect. And our third line is going to read, so the quadrilateral is A, and if you need to, scroll the video back to that chart and look at all the different attributes of each shape that we identified. And if you guys said that the quadrilateral is a rhombus, you would be correct. 100 points for you. So let's go ahead and write rhombus. It's R-H-O-M-B-U-S. Voila, perfect. So let's go ahead and move on to the independent practice, boys and girls. Give Mr. Yates a sec. There we go. Perfect. So we're going to start by looking at number 3. Now we're not going to do each one of these, boys and girls. I just want to demonstrate to you guys how we want you guys to be doing these in your homework, because these look very similar, I should say, to your guys' homework. We just want to show you guys how we want you guys to be doing your homework. So it says, describe the attributes of each quadrilateral, then classify the quadrilateral. So let's take a look at number 3. So let's look at our 2 pairs of opposite sides. Now, Mr. Yates, any color you want. Can you go ahead and highlight our 2 pairs of opposite sides? Perfect. Feels like Christmas with these colors. All right, so for number 3, so we are going to identify these opposite sides as, think to yourself as to how you could identify those. So let's go ahead and write, just like Mr. Yates is doing, opposite sides are, they're going to be parallel, boys and girls, correct?
Oh
That is
no,
what
Miss
you thought.
Garcia, I was not. I was doing what I do sometimes. I was writing without listening to the teacher tell me what to write down.
It's okay. They are congruent. That is correct. So if
But we're
you,
talking about parallel right now. So,
yep, you can go ahead and write. You can go ahead and write congruent because congruent and parallel are the same, are both correct.
so I could say opposite sides are parallel. And what was the other thing they are, Miss Garcia?
Congruent. So parallel, boys and girls, just means that the opposite sides will never intersect. And congruent means that they are the same size and the same shape. Yep. And then then it wants us to classify the quadrilateral. So boys and girls, go ahead and take a look at this quadrilateral and look back at that chart and see how you guys would identify this. And if you guys classified the quadrilateral as a parallelogram, another 50 points. I'm very proud. It is a parallelogram. And just be mindful of your guys' spelling on this one. And make sure you guys are doing answer sentences just like Mr. Yates is doing for us right here.
And I just wanted to add in, Miss Garcia, that we want them to make sure that they are looking at the definition of the attributes, like opposite sides are parallel and congruent. It's not just because the shape matches the drawing, it's because it has opposite sides are parallel and congruent. I want to make sure.
We want to be looking at the words, not the pictures, because pictures can be deceiving sometimes.
Exactly. So. Okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and skip number 4, and we're going to go on to number 5. So if you guys see a question like number 3 on your guys' homework, that's how we want you guys to do it. We want you guys to be specific on the attributes, as well as make sure that you guys are using answer sentences, looking at the words, and making sure that you guys are writing out your answers fully. All right, on to number 5. It says circle the quadrilateral or quadrilaterals that have all the attributes of a parallelogram. So this is where that chart kind of comes in handy. Or you can even look at our number 3, but it says that because you want to know the attributes of a parallelogram. So just for a refresher, a parallelogram, huh?
I was going to bring it back to chart.
Okay, thank you. All right, so a parallelogram, boys and girls, is defined as a quadrilateral with opposite sides congruent, which means same size and, yep, same shape. And they are parallel, which means what? Yes, they never intersect. That would be correct. So that's what a parallelogram is. So let's go ahead and go back to our other page that has our number 5 on it. And let's go ahead and take a look at these other shapes. So our first shape is a rectangle. So let's go ahead and Mr. Yates, if you don't mind, I'm so sorry, can you bring back that chart just so we can see what the attributes of a rectangle are? Just so we can show the kids how.
It's a really good idea. Yeah. Okay.
All right, so a rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. So, boys and girls, the first word in that definition of a rectangle is a parallelogram with 4. Then it says with 4 right angles. But the key word right here is they identify a rectangle as a parallelogram. So a rectangle is a parallelogram. So.
And Ms. Garcia, one other thing to add into this that's important to look at is that this rectangle has opposite sides that are congruent. These opposite sides, this side and this side are congruent. And the sides here are also congruent. These sides and these sides are congruent. And it's got 2 sets of parallel lines. So it has exactly the same qualities of a parallelogram.
Yes. So you guys are more than welcome to draw a rectangle on the side on your notes if you're taking notes, and you guys can even test it out for yourself, and you guys can, mark up your rectangle and see if your guys' different sides are congruent as well, because they should be. So let's go ahead and go back to our other page, Mr. Yates, and let's go ahead and circle our rectangle, because our rectangle has opposite sides that are congruent, as well as opposite sides that are parallel. So our next one, boys and girls, that we're going to be looking at is a rhombus. So let's go ahead and come back to that chart. Sorry, Mr. Yates, give me a lot of flipping. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at a rhombus. So the rhombus is going to be like the sideways diamond right there. Mr. Yates, do you mind pointing to the rhombus just so they know? Yeah, that shape. So a rhombus is defined as a parallelogram with four sides congruent. So that already, so the opposite sides, so each pair of opposite sides, since they're all congruent, that means that each pair of opposite sides are going to be congruent as well. But another thing that makes a parallelogram is that the opposite sides are parallel. So if you guys, Mr. Yates, do you mind highlighting the two pairs of opposite sides?
Sure.
So there's going to be one pair in the red. And then there's another set. So if you guys look at each pair of opposite sides, neither one of those are going to intersect. The two green ones will not intersect, and the two red ones will not intersect, which means that they are parallel. So, boys and girls, our rhombus is also a quadrilateral that has the same attributes as a parallelogram. So, Mr. Yates, do you mind going back to that other page, and let's go ahead and circle rhombus, because it does have the same attributes. Now, boys and girls, we want you guys, if your homework has this, we want you guys to be doing this. We want you guys to look at that chart and look at the different attributes of all of these and compare and contrast them just like it wants you to, because this will really help you guys. So next up is a square. So let's go ahead, Mr. Yates, let's go ahead and look at our chart. All right. So it says a square is a parallelogram with four sides congruent. So that means, just kind of like how our rhombus was, that if all four sides are congruent, that means that the two pairs of opposite sides are going to be congruent as well. Just like Mr. Yates has those little tick marks on them. So there's already one that's the same as our rectangle. And then it says it has four right angles, which isn't necessarily defined in our parallelogram, but let's keep reading. It says a square has all the attributes of a rectangle and a rhombus. So, boys and girls, this would mean that it does have two sets of opposite sides that are going to be parallel as well, which means that the two pairs of opposite sides, just like Mr. Yates is highlighting for us right now, will never intersect with one another. It's just like two lanes on a road or on a highway. You don't need cars crashing on the highway. So therefore, those two pairs of opposite sides, they are going to be parallel. So all those attributes do match up with our rectangle. So a square, you guys should be circling on your other page. So Mr. Yates, let's go ahead and go back to our other page, and let's go ahead and circle square. Perfect. Now our last shape that we're going to be looking at is going to be a trapezoid. So let's go back and look at our chart and look at the attributes of a trapezoid. All right, so a trapezoid is defined as a quadrilateral with exactly one pair of opposite sides. All right, so
one pair of opposite sides that are parallel.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of words. Okay, so so on this one, boys and girls, so we do have one pair of opposite sides that are going to be parallel, but is that one pair of opposite sides, are they congruent? That congruent, boys and girls, means that they're going to be the same size and the same shape. Mr. Yates, does that pair of opposite sides that you have highlighted in the red, do they look like they would be congruent?
They're definitely not congruent, Ms. Garcia.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. So boys and girls, that's already one thing that makes it to where it does not match the attributes of a rectangle. But let's go ahead and check the other one just for kicks and giggles. So it also said the opposite sides are parallel. Now, Mr. Yates, do you mind highlighting the other? Yeah, just there you go. Boys and girls, looking at these two opposite sides that are in green, would these two be considered parallel? If you said no, you would be correct, because if Mr. Yates kept drawing and following those two lines, they would eventually intersect, and well, if two cars were driving on in each one of those lanes, they'd eventually crash into one another. So that would be a no-go. So boys and girls, a trapezoid does not match the attributes of a rectangle, so we don't want to circle that one. So what you guys should have circled on this one, just like Mr. Yates has, you guys should have a rectangle, a rhombus, and a square circled. A trapezoid does not match the attributes of a parallelogram. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and skip number 6 because we already showed an example on number 5 as to what we want you guys to do on those kinds of questions. So let's go ahead and go over number 7. Now it says, state whether the following statements are true or false. If false, boys and girls, they want you guys to explain why. So that would be your guys' because statement. So make sure that you guys, if it is false, you guys are writing that because statement. So let's go ahead and look at our number 7. It says all parallelograms have opposite sides congruent and parallel. So let's take this sentence by sentence. So it's saying each parallelogram has opposite sides congruent and parallel. Now, Mr. Yates, do you mind going back to our chart? Just so they can see. All right, so our definition of a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with opposite sides congruent and parallel. Now, does that match our sentence on question number 7? Yes. So that we can check mark that. That's a go. That would be correct. All right. Now let's take a look at our next sentence. It says, since rectangles are parallelograms, it's a difficult word, I guess. Since rectangles are parallelograms, all rectangles have opposite sides congruent and parallel. Now, Mr. Yates, do you mind going back to our chart just so we can look at a rectangle? All right, so do you mind highlighting our 2 pairs of opposite sides? So there's going to be 1 pair of opposite sides, boys and girls. And in the red is going to be our second. So our question, I have it pulled up on my phone, so if you guys see me reading, that's what it is. It says all rectangles have opposite sides congruent. So our 2 red, our pair of red opposite sides, Mr. Yates, do those look congruent to you?
They do.
Yep, so he went ahead and wrote the tick marks. So then let's go ahead and take a look at our green ones. Mr. Yates, do those ones look congruent to you?
Indeed they do.
Yes, and boys and girls, if you're confused as to what congruent means same size as well as same shape. So Mr. Yates is putting 2 tick marks on the green ones because those 2 match up, and then he put only 1 tick mark on the red ones because those 2 are the same. And then it also says that the 2 pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Now, Mr. Yates, do the top and bottom ones, the ones with the 1 tick mark, does that pair of opposite sides, do those ones look parallel to you?
Yes, when I draw them like this, or when I look at them, extend them out, I know that they're going to be parallel because I know they won't meet.
Exactly. And then let's go ahead and take a look at our other ones that you highlighted in green before with the 2 tick marks. Do those ones look parallel to you?
Yes. In fact, even though I drew them, this one not that great, when I draw it really straight, you can definitely tell that they're going to be parallel.
Yeah, so another way that you guys can think about it, like I've said, you know, in my head, it's kind of how I remembered was if you guys have 2 cars driving in those lanes, they will not crash into one another. So that would be true as well. So let's go ahead, Mr. Yates, let's go ahead and flip back to our other page. So we made sure that our first sentence was true. So it says all parallelograms have opposite sides congruent and parallel. We agreed that that is true. And then it says since rectangles are parallelograms, all rectangles have opposite sides congruent and parallel, which is also true. So boys and girls, is what Mr. Yates is doing right now, he's saying both statements are true. Now, if they said a statement in there that was false, we would want you guys to add a because as to why it was false. So we're not going to go do number 8 just because we did number 7. We showed you guys how to do that one. And then let's go ahead and take a look at number 10, Mr. Yates.
But there's no picture here, Miss Garcia, of it. How are we going to figure this out?
I would say a good way to figure this out is to make sure to reference back to that chart that we have been using, as well as you guys can always draw too, if that helps you. If you're a visual learner, that will help you as well. But make sure you guys are using that chart. It will be really, really helpful. All right. Mr. Yates, do you have any other ideas as to like what would help you?
Well, probably reading the words. And then when I read the words, trying to match those to what I know about quadrilaterals. So let's go and read it words by words.
All right. So it says Adina, however you want to say it. All right. Yeah. Adina used a quadrilateral in her art design. So we know that we're dealing with one of our shapes that's on our chart. So our second sentence says the quadrilateral has no sides congruent and only one pair of opposite sides parallel. So let's look at that first chunk. It says the quadrilateral has no sides congruent. Now, boys and girls, congruent means same size and same shape. So let's go ahead and look at our chart.
And it could be a quadrilateral or a trapezoid because rectangle and square and rhombus, well, square has parallel side or congruent sides, and rhombus has congruent sides, and parallelogram has congruent sides. What should we do?
So we want to look at one that does not have congruent sides. So boys and girls, let's go ahead and look at all of our shape or quadrilaterals or trapezoid that does not have congruent sides. Now, Mr. Yates, which one out of all of these to you does not have any sides congruent?
The only one that would even match that close is the trapezoid. It's a trap because this one has no congruent sides to it.
Yeah, and then if you want to just keep that chart, I have the prompt pulled up right here. So I'll go ahead and keep reading and we can continue just looking at the chart. Less flipping for you. I should have thought of that earlier. And then it says, and only one pair of opposite sides parallel. Now, Mr. Yates, looking at our trapezoid, does that match the description of that trapezoid?
Exactly. In fact, I could tell right here, not only the definition, it says one pair of opposite sides parallel. And I see that represented here. There's only one set of parallel lines that are parallel. It has to be a trapezoid.
Yes, exactly, because that's all the words that there are, because the last sentence just says, classify the shape of the quadrilateral she used. So, boys and girls, let's go ahead and make an answer sentence for this one. Now, Mr. Yates is saying she used a trapezoid, which would be correct. So, boys and girls, on any problem that you have in your homework that is similar to this one, make sure that you're taking it sentence by sentence. If you need to, go ahead and just like we did, we looked at we read the first sentence, just like you guys kind of do in the word problem of the day. So you guys look at the first sentence. If it doesn't have any attributes in there, then okay, great information. She used a quadrilateral in her art design, so we do know it's quadrilateral. Great. The second sentence, It was kind of a big one. It had a lot of the information in it. So we broke it down into little pieces. So it says the quadrilateral has no sides congruent. So we took that information and then we used that, and then we looked at the chart. And then once we found the shape that matched that, then we continued reading the words. And then we used, and only one pair of opposite sides are parallel. So then we took that information, and out of the shapes we matched to what matched that description. And by the process of elimination and looking at the attributes, we came up with a trapezoid. So, boys and girls, that is going to be all of the notes for today. All of your guys's, for your homework, everything should be in this lesson. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Mr. Yates via email. We will definitely get back to you on it. But yeah, so I think that concludes our lesson for today. Mr. Yates, do you have anything else to add?
Nope, I think you did very well on this one, and I think the kids should be following along. If they're following along, everything should be great. We'll talk to you guys later.